Today we're changing the rear main seal and rear main seal retainer gasket on our 99 Chevy Suburban. This is a one-piece rear main seal, so we had to pull our trans. If you have the two-piece rear main seal, you don't have to pull a transmission to do this. We've already pulled our trans out. If you want to check out our video on how to do that, we'll put a link up here. We let the oil drain overnight because you want a clean, oil-free surface when you reinstall the main seal. We want as little oil in there as possible. So first thing we want to do is remove these 6 flex plate bolts. So we're going to go ahead and pull those out. Set that. All right. So now, if you're just removing the rear main seal, it's a little different than if you want to remove the seal retainer and replace that gasket, which we'll be doing. But right now, just to remove the seal, what we're gonna do is take a drill with a very small drill bit, and we're gonna be very careful not to touch the crank, and we're gonna drill 2 small holes and one on the other side. There we go. And we're going to take 2 small pointed screws, which I have right here. So we're gonna put those guys into those 2 holes. So we'll do one right here. And one right here. And those just need to be started enough that they're grabbing. And we're going to take a claw hammer with the claw in the back and very gently just try and pry that seal out. There we go. Inspecting this right away, you can see our seal was messed up when it was installed and pinched that ring right there. So that's probably why it was leaking. So that's trash. So if you're gonna replace the seal retainer gasket like we are, keep following along. If you want to see how to just reinstall a new rear main seal, we'll have time stamps in the description. So we're gonna keep on going. To remove this retainer, we're going to drop the oil pan, remove these 4 bolts, and that should just come right off. All right, to drop this oil pan, to give us a little bit more access, we're going to remove the oil filter housing, and that's 2 1/4-inch Allen bolts. I think in theory, you could, if you can access the bolts for the oil pan without removing this, you can go ahead and do that, and you should be able to take it off. Makes life a little easier if you take this out. Blam. All right, and we can just slide that out of the way. We'll probably move it around a little bit to get around it. Oh God. And just like that, your pan should fall out of the car. And let's see if we've got enough clearance. We do. Yeah, baby. There we go. To give us a little bit more clearance to remove the oil pan, to change the rear main seal retainer gasket, we have this engine support bar. And if you haven't ever seen one of these before, all it is are some rubber feet, and this can set right across the engine bay, and then you use basically these giant wing nuts, wrap it around something in the engine bay, and you can tighten it up, and that should give you a little bit of clearance. If you need more room, you can loosen the engine mounts and go up even higher, but this makes it so we don't have to use a hoist, and we can still get out our oil pan. I think they're 80 bucks at Harbor Freight, so yeah. And we'll link that in the description. Now that we got that pan out of the way, we're gonna remove this gasket because we'll be replacing this. Ooh, RTV held well in the front. Now the next thing we have to do is remove these 4 bolts holding on the retainer. I believe 3 of them are 3/8 and one of them is 7/16 in our case. And then our seal retainer should just come right off. There we go. And we're gonna set that someplace clean, and we can remove this gasket, which is RTV'd in place, which you're not supposed to do. Then we just want to clean off any leftover gasket or RTV. You can use a razor blade or a soft plastic scraper, and we're gonna hit this with some degreaser and get the new gasket on there. To replace our retainer gasket, what we need to do is, I've already cleaned and degreased this surface, and I've cleaned and degreased this surface, and we're going to go ahead and get everything lined up on here and go ahead and set this in place like so, and make sure this seats over the dowel and the gasket's in place. I'm going to install this top bolt here, just hand tight to hold it in place, because each of these retaining bolts gets red thread locker. And you saw on the other gasket we removed, there was black RTV. It's recommended that this gasket is installed dry with no other sealers, but the bolts get red thread locker. So just a little dot on the end, and we can screw these in. And now that we've got all those other ones started, go back to this one that was holding it in place and thread lock that one. And all of these 4 bolts get tightened to 218 inch-pounds or 18 foot-pounds. And we're gonna go little by little, making sure it goes on flat and evenly, just like you would for a tire. Hey. Now to reinstall our oil pan, we've got our gasket. This is a Fel-Pro gasket. We have it laid out on here, all the holes are lined up. They recommend to use black RTV on the 4 corners. So we're gonna get that put on there, and we're gonna put the oil pan back in. So should have got the zip ties. We've got the oil pan installed with our new gasket, and now we're going to install our rear main seal. To do that, we're going to cut off a piece of this PVC pipe and hollow it out a little bit so this fits perfectly inside there, and that's what we're going to use to make sure this gets tapped in really evenly. This is 4-inch PVC. So I've got about a 3 or 4 inch piece here. The inside diameter is a little bit too thick to fit well over the seal, so we're gonna take a trusty die grinder and hollow that out a little bit. And as always, safety first. All right, we'll see if that fits. Perfect. So that fits perfectly flush on the outside and is the right diameter, so we should be good to go. We've got our crank and housing cleaned off and degreased. We have our seal cleaned off and free of any debris. So what we're trying to do here is set that with the guide fully seated around the crank. Okay, there we go. And we're gonna hold that in place. So when that's all the way on there, these little splines will be flush with the crank, and you can go ahead and start to slide that on best you can. And you're gonna grab your seal installation tool. Okay, we're looking good. And we're just gonna gently tap that and try and get it to go on as evenly as possible. Okay, looks like everything's going in smoothly. As you can see, our seal has seated all the way around the crank and looks good. So we're just gonna keep hammering that evenly around the edges to make sure it's flush. All right, and our seal is firmly seated and flush with the housing, and that's all there is to it. Next, all we have to do is reinstall our flywheel and transmission, and we're good to go. If you guys like the video, like the video. If you want to subscribe for more, subscribe for more, and we'll catch you on the next one.